This video is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardinis, to use this as an educational material. Human trafficking is a grave violation of human rights and a global issue that affects millions of individuals across the world. It is defined as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons through force, fraud, or coercion. For the purpose of exploitation, human trafficking is often referred as modern-day slavery. This report aims to shed light on the multifaceted nature of human trafficking, examining its causes, the methods used by traffickers, and the profound impact it has on victims. Despite international efforts to combat this crime, human trafficking remains pervasive, driven by factors such as poverty, lack of education, and political instability. Traffickers exploit vulnerable populations including women, children, and migrants, subjecting them to forced labor, sexual exploitation, and other forms of abuse. The clandestine nature of trafficking operation and use of technology to facilitate these crimes further complicate efforts to address the issue. This report will explore the current state of human trafficking globally, highlighting key trends and patterns. It will also discuss legal frameworks, international collaboration in place to combat trafficking, as well as the challenges faced by the law enforcement and non-governmental organizations in their efforts to protect and support victims. By understanding the complexities of human trafficking, we can better advocate for effective policies and interventions to eradicate this heinous crime and support those affected by it.
In the PPT, as you can see, there are some examples of what human trafficking is. I'll explain it. Well, please listen well. So, human trafficking is a form of exploitation where individuals are forced into labor or commercial sex acts. Example includes sex trafficking, which involves forced prostitution, child sex trafficking, and sex tourism. Labor trafficking involves domestic servitude, agricultural labor, factory work, forced marriage, organ trafficking, and criminal exploitation, forced begging, and drug trade. So, sex traffic involves forced prostitution, where individuals are compelled to engage in sex work against their will, often through manipulation, threats, or violence. So, child sex trafficking involves minor being exploited for commercial sex. Labor trafficking involves domestic servitude, agricultural labor, factory work, and forced marriage. So forced marriage example is child marriage. Minors are married off without their consent, often as part of an exchange of or for economic gain, resulting in loss of freedom and exploitation. One example is in Mindanao. So organ trafficking may exploit vulnerable people by coercing them into giving up organs, typically kidneys, under fraudulent or forced circumstances to sell their profit. Criminal exploitation is a begging of children that are forced to beg money in public places that are required to hand over earnings to traffickers and drug trades. Sometimes force victims, including minors, to work in drug production or distribution under dangerous conditions. So this example highlights the various ways traffickers exploit people for economic gain, often preying on those who are vulnerable due to economic hardship, lack of social support, or political instability.
These are the three elements of human trafficking. First, the act, meaning this is what is done. The act's elements of forced labor is met when the trafficker recruits, harbors, transports, provides, or obtains a person for labor or services. For example, a trafficker may recruit individuals by promising legitimate jobs but instead forces them into labor in agriculture or constructions. Next is the means. Means meaning is how it is done. The means element of forced labor includes the trafficker's use of force, fraud, or coercion. The coercive scheme can include threats or force, debt manipulation, withholding of pay, confiscation of identities documents, psychological coercion, reputational harm, manipulation of the use of addictive substances, threats to other people, or other forms of coercion. For example, coercion can manifest as withholding pay of confiscating identity documents, preventing workers from leaving their jobs. The next is the purpose. Purpose meaning why it is done. The purpose element focuses on the pre- perpetrator's goal to exploit a person's labor or services. There is no limit on the location or type of industry. Traffickers can commit this crime in any sector of setting, whether legal or illicit, including but not limited to agricultural fields, factories, restaurants, hotels, massage parlors, retail stores, fishing vessels, mines, private homes, or drug trafficking operation. The ultimate goal of traffickers is to exploit labor, which can occur in various industries such as factories, restaurants, or even domestic work, regardless of legality or setting. All three elements are essential to constitute the crime of forced labor.
The current state of human trafficking in the Philippines. First, corruption and official complicity. Corruption remains a significant concern, with some officials complicated in trafficking crimes. Second, limited resources. The law enforcement agencies require additional personnel funds and equipment to effectively combat trafficking. Last is the online sexual exploitation. The country struggles to address the high volume of online sexual exploitation cases, particularly involving children.
Human trafficking remains a critical issue in the Philippines, with effort focused on combating labor and sex trafficking both domestically and internationally. The Philippines has consistently maintained a Tier 1 ranking in U.S. disbursement in Trafficking Persons Report, which reflects substantial compliance with international standards. Despite this, several challenges persist, particularly in ensuring that anti-trafficking resources are sufficient and effectively coordinated across the government. However, despite these advances, challenges persist. Key recommendations call for increased resources, especially for anti-trafficking task forces, more focused attention on labor trafficking, and better support for the victims. Local agencies faces in hurdles in coordinating comprehensive responses, which is why the government is pushing for a whole-of-nation approach. This will involve broader public engagement to prevent trafficking at the community level and detect suspicious activity in the transit hub. The Philippines has made significant progress. The path to eradicating human trafficking requires ongoing, multifaceted strategies to address emerging forms of exploitation and prevent trafficking across vulnerable communities.
Human trafficking and migration are interconnectedness issues that require a coordinated and comprehensive response to address the root causes of vulnerability and explosion. Efforts to combat human trafficking should also take into account that specific needs and challenges faced by migrant populations. Human trafficking and migration can intersect in a complex ways. Variable migrants, including those playing playing complex poverty or persecution, may be targeted by traffickers who exploit their desperation and lack of access to safe and legal migration pathways. To combat trafficking is essential to address migration's root causes, ensure safe and legal pathways, and protect migrants' rights. Example, number one, smuggling and trafficking. Traffickers may pose as smugglers or other false promises of a safe passage to devise migrants. Number two, exploitations. Migrants may be forced into a labor or a sex work to pay of debts or fake pays.
Human rights and migration are based on the idea that all people, regardless of where they come from or their legal status, deserve to be treated with dignity, safety, and fairness. Migration, which is the movement of people from one country or area to another, often exposes individuals to risks and challenges. Human rights protections help address these challenges by ensuring that certain basic standards of treatment are upheld, even if someone is foreigner or doesn't have legal permission to be in a country. The goal of this human rights protection is to make sure that migration happens in a safe, orderly, and human way. International agreements like the Global Compact for Safe, Ordinary, and Regular Migration aim to establish common standards so that countries can work together to support migrants' rights and address the factor that drive people to migrate in the first place.
Human rights and migration refers to a basic rights that all migrants, regardless of their immigration status, are entitled to. These rights are enshrined in international human rights law and treaties, and include the right to life, liberty, security, and privacy, as well as protection from discrimination and exploitation. Migrants often face a range of challenges and vulnerabilities, including the risk of human rights violations such as violence, abuse, exploitations, and discrimination. It is important for governments, international organizations, and civil society to uphold and protect the human rights of migrants and to ensure that they are treated with dignity and respect throughout the migration process. In order to ensure that human rights are respected in migration, it is essential for governments to adopt policies and practices that uphold these rights, including providing access to legal protection and support services for migrants, addressing the root causes of migration, and promoting tolerance and diversity within community. Civil society organizations and international bodies also play a crucial role in monitoring and advocating for the protection of migrants' rights. By upholding human rights in migration, we can create more just and humane society for all.
Human trafficking negatively impact globalization by fostering exploitation and inequality, undermining human rights and disrupting economies. It distorts labor markets by providing cheap, forced labor, which competes unfairly with legitimate businesses. This exploitation creates security and ethical concern, weakening international cooperation and social stability. Trafficking hinders sustainable global development, perpetuates poverty, and strains international relations.